What I wanted when I ultimately arrived in Canada was to gain a voice, he said, to be heard. That longing has never left me. Well, he's made his voice heard. The most important Canadian journalist of his generation, Peter C. Newman, has recorded the story of this country over 6 decades and 26 books.
I'm going to try and make a lot of very strong statements about Canada, and I think that's very important.
So Peter arrived in Canada at the age of 11, a refugee from Nazi aggression in Czechoslovakia. He attended an exclusive school reserved for the sons of Canada's wealthy. Politely, Peter was referred to as a war guest. Not so politely, they called him a Jew boy. As a journalist, he went on to write about many of the very boys he went to school with, recounting the lives of the rich and powerful, business tycoons, political players, and of course, prime ministers. He's been called the most cussed and discussed journalist in Canada, and at least one prime minister has said he's felt betrayed and devastated by what Peter wrote. His latest is sure to have ruffled a few feathers as well. It's called When the Gods Changed, The Death of Liberal Canada, a book that started out as a story of a prime minister in the making and turned out to be a eulogy for the Liberal Party of Canada.
Please welcome back to the show, Peter C. Newman. Nice to see you. Welcome back.
I never knew I had a pointy head.
We rarely get to see it without that hat.
That's why I wear a hat.
I have the same kind of head as you, so I'll be wearing that hat as well. Congratulations, it's a bestseller. I mean,
well, thank you. Great to be here.
Not bad, right? It's just behind a guy, some dude, Steve Jobs, a book about him, so that's not so bad, right?
Well, I last time I was here, I remember saying to you that, talking about the government, any government, and I said that even crime wouldn't pay if the government ran it. Remember that? And the other thing I said was that even when cabinet ministers admit they've lied, nobody believes them.
And or nobody cares, which might even be sad.
That's even
right?
worse. That's right.
So when you get on, this bus or whatever, you meet with Ignacio. You're about to do this story about the Liberal Party. At what point did it occur to you, or did it, that you might be writing about the end of this version of the Liberal Party?
Well, there are 2 books there. I started out, the new prime minister, this great recruit from Harvard, Michael Ignatieff, and he was going to save all our asses, and he turned out to be a useless.
It just didn't work. But did you know that while that was happening, or do you know that in hindsight? Could you see it?
Well, I found out when I was on his bus trip. Remember, he went by bus across the country, and I was on that bus. And every night, he was just greeted with enthusiasm everywhere he went. And people would applaud and laugh, and I thought, well, this is great. He's making yards, and he did too. What I didn't realize, and that's when it changed, is that he was talking to the converted. He was talking to liberals. And he didn't know because he hadn't been here. He only arrived 5 days before he declared for the prime ministership. And he only knew 3 liberals by their first name. Completely strange.
Is it just Canadians telling the Liberal Party, just Canada's different than what the Liberal Party thought it was?
Well, complicated question, because Liberal Party made Canada what it is today. They were in party longer than any other political party in any democracy in the world in history. So what we've got now is basically, until recently, a Liberal Canada. Harper went into politics basically so that he would be the natural governing party as opposed to liberals. Mm-hmm. And by God, he's done it. It took him, 3 elections, but he's got the majority now, and he can do anything he wants. And what I say in the book is, if he stays in, he is going to create a Canada that none of us will recognize, so much so that we may have to change the country's name.
Yeah, but here's the thing, this is what Canadians know what they're getting, so this is maybe what Canadians want. The majority of the voting Canadians in our current system, this is what they want, right? Well, that's democracy.
Yeah, that's right. And this brings me to the heart of everything that's in that book. You never question the voters. The voters are always right. They were right not to give him a majority till he earned it. They were right not to elect Ignatieff or Dion. And there is something in the air, because where is the jungle telegraph that links the voters? I don't know. but they always do the right thing.
Based on your history and the books you've written, when you get on that bus with Mike Lignachev, does he look at you and go, "Oh God, here we go, here we go," knowing that you have this history of being able to really go after these guys?
Yeah.
Are they nervous when you get on board in a project like this?
Yeah. Well, I keep telling them, look, I did the Mulrooney tapes, and everybody thought that I was a liberal because I was attacking the conservatives. Now I'm attacking liberals. Everybody thinks I'm a conservative, and I'm nothing. I'm neutral. I attack everybody.
But why is it important to attack?
Well, I think they need to be attacked. They're responsible to us. I mean, they may have the power, but we can ditch them out as we have and as we will. So I sort of make them accountable. That's what I try to do in my books. And I was walking down the street. This is my 25th book, and this lady, very nice lady, came up to me and she gushed and she said, "I've read all your books." And I said, "That's impossible. I haven't read all my books."
When you were young, did you have a politician that you felt betrayed by, or that disrespected the voters, and that kind of helped forge you to be that guy who wants to seek this truth?
Well, look, my first book was about John Diefenbaker, and I really believed in John Diefenbaker because he took on the Liberals at that time, and they would just be very, very arrogant during the pipeline debate and all that stuff. And he took them on, and he lost because, he just wasn't used to running a government. And I remember in the last meeting, he died shortly afterwards. He saw me in the audience. This is after my book came out. I was very critical of him. And he saw me, and I remember I always sat behind really fat guys so he wouldn't see me. And he pointed at me, and he said, he saw me, and he said, "There's that hireling of liberalism who writes pseudo-biographies for monetary gain." And only the last part was true.
Well, he called at you this way. So I'm going to play a clip right here. So this is Brian Mulrooney's response, basically, to Peter C. Newman. Take a look at this.
Your Excellencies, Prime Minister, chef des partis de l'opposition, justices of the Supreme Court of Canada, members of the Cabinet, honorables députés, sénateurs et sénatrices, distinguished members of the press gallery, mesdames et messieurs, good evening. Peter Newman, go yourself.
It's pretty good. Not many people get that kind of...
That's at a press gallery dinner back in 2005.
This is the guy who was very angry that I used his swear words in my book because I quoted him accurately. But I treasure that.
He felt betrayed by that book, and you've received criticism over your career for that kind of stuff. How did you feel about the criticism personally when it was leveled at you?
Look, I mean, criticism sells books. You know that.
But, so is that what this is about, though, to you? It's got to be more than just business to you.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I always write what I feel. I write from here and here, stomach and heart. Most people write from the head only, and I don't. I write about feelings. And I write about something that nobody else writes about, and that's body language. It's the only language that doesn't lie. You look at political body language, and you'll see that sometimes it contradicts what politician is saying, and he's, his body language is quite different. Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting way to treat politics. When you think about,
we talked about the books you've written. When you think about your legacy, what do you think your legacy is?
My legacy? Well, I guess my legacy is to bring a touch of realism to journalism, because I've never had any angle. I've never tried to say, what kind of country I want, what kind of political party I want. I just tell the truth as I see it, and that's not always easy, and it isn't. what I'm searching for is not truth. It's too big a concept. I'm searching for the ring of truth, you know, something that should be true or is true, but I can't prove it 100%. None of us can. Right. And so I sort of speculate, and I give the politicians benefit of the doubt sometimes. But sometimes you don't have to, because they're so stupid. You know, and they are. I mean, now stupid is the wrong word. They're so self-obsessed, and they think that they are the government instead of just temporary holders of office, you know, and they can be voted out, and they are voted out.
All right, stick around. More with Peter C. Newman after this. And I want to find out what you think of the guy that's going to step, or that is stepped in right now, Bob Rae. More with Peter Newman after this. You're absolutely right.
I'm very happy to have this responsibility. You will understand it if I said I might have liked it a little earlier.
But we're back here with Peter C. Newman. So you've got this book, When the Gods Changed, The Death of the Liberal Party in Canada. Do you actually believe that they're dead? Because the Liberal Party have this ability to bounce back or have reinvented themselves. Do you think they'll be back?
Well, look, what a Liberal Party or any other party needs, first of all, is a power base. Now, they used to have a power base in Quebec, then they had a power base in the Maritimes, then they have a power base in Toronto, rural Ontario. That's all gone. So they don't have a power base. Secondly, they need money. Now, Mr. Harper has taken care of that by withdrawing the federal subsidy to all political parties. What they also need is organization, and they themselves say that 80 ridings don't even have a riding association. And finally, they need a leader, and that brings us, obviously, to Bob Rae, who thinks he's the leader.
But here's the thing, Bob Rae pulled off like a Buster Douglas type surprise when he beat David Peterson, right? So Bob Rae has the ability to, or has at least in the past had the ability to pull this sort of thing off. You said he thinks he's the leader. That implies that you don't believe he is a leader.
Well, look, the fact is, and it's not in dispute, he nearly bankrupted Ontario. And
recession didn't help.
Yeah,
him.
oh yeah, I'm not saying it's his fault, but he was in office when it happened, and he didn't deal with it very well. So when you see the attack ads that the Tories ran against Ignatieff, which were pretty bad and not all true, but if they were doing attack ads on Rae, they would be true, you know. So it'd be pretty effective. So he'd have a hard time.
So what about the Liberals? Did you see somebody?
Not right now. I think it's too early. There are several cabinet ministers in provincial governments who would make good leaders. But as of now, it's going to be Rae, and I think it'll be a disaster.
You're not 21 years old anymore. You're still a young man, but you're not 21 years old anymore. Do you start thinking about how less time behind the typewriter and more time on the boat for you? Do you think about, you know, as you get into this part of your career?
Well, I solved that because I put my boat in the water for the winter, and I have a bubbler so the ice doesn't catch me.
So you just sit on your boat and you just type?
Yeah. So,
how do you want to be remembered?
Shit disturber.
Yeah. Book is called When the Gods Changed, The Death of the Liberal Canada. Peter C. Newman, we'll be right back.